Um, testing, testing. Hope this thing works. Tape number 1, Master Collection, Ontario Paranormal Institute. For now, we'll just call me Investigator 32. Alright. A little bit of preamble. We have been recategorizing a lot of the files in this old place. God, it's huge. Looks like somebody rented out an old warehouse at some point and just kind of forgot about it. The OPI took over a couple of years ago and attempted to start digitizing all of the accounts here. But for some reason, digitization didn't take. And so we've resorted to using these old cassettes. After hearing about this institute in England that was using the same thing. So it worked for them, apparently, so we are going to try it ourselves. If you're hearing this, then the experiment worked. Congratulations. As with most of these stories we are going to be picking up today, well, a lot of them were just kind of written down very hastily, so I'm not so sure of the veracity of any of these. My job is only to put them down. I will be speaking them into the tape. A written account will be placed with the tape and recategorized in a bigger archive. That's not my job. My job is just to investigate these original claims. So, we're here. The first one here is a little odd. It's written on sort of, it is paper. It seems like paper anyway. But I think perhaps the writer had a little bit of trouble with the pen. It's very shaky hand. This one's labeled as 19 chestnuts, or at least the box was. It came to us from our friends at the Hamilton Paranormal Research Center. Case file 137. But this doesn't appear to be any sort of documentation from the research center itself. I'm going to start reading, and the only rule that I've got from my bosses is that if anything should pop up that is particularly egregious, that I stop immediately. And so I will attempt to hold that. I apologize if I manage to read something distressing. The tape will be destroyed afterwards if that's the case. Oh, I'm just going to have some water. Wonderful. All right. Oh, it's a first-person account. That's fun. All right, here we go. I have been staying in this house for some time now. I grew up here, so I know every nook and cranny of this house. My parents moved out a while ago, leaving me here to take care of the place, I assume. They didn't say anything to me, they just packed their stuff and left. I guess they rented out from time to time, as I've seen many people come and go. Some were cool, some were assholes, but all in all, it hasn't been that bad. Roommates are roommates, after all. I stay in the attic. I turned it into a bedroom a while back. A little cramped, but how much space does a guy like me really need? Sometimes when I'm bored, I like to sit up there and reflect on some of the people I've come into contact with during their stay here. Like the businessman, Mr. Reynolds. He was cool. Mid-30s, ladies' man. Kept his place looking sharp. For the ladies, of course. He was always talking to some guy on what he called his laptop, but I don't really know what that is. Then one day, he just disappeared. People came and took his stuff shortly after that. What happened to him? Anyway, then there were what I like to call, for lack of a better term, the high guys. Two stoner buddies that like to sit around all day, drink beer, play video games, get stoned. Who am I to judge anyone? Each their own, I always say. But they trashed this place. Can't have that. I tried everything I could to get them out of here, but they were so high most of the time they thought I was a hallucination and left it off. Stayed in my room, and the day the cops came to the house to take them away. laughing now. There's been many families move in and out. None of them really stayed too long. Moms and dads with a couple kids. Sometimes just mom and kids, sometimes just dad. Aside from a few screaming matches and the sounds of lovemaking on occasion, they all seem to get along pretty well. I really enjoy playing with the kids, though. There's so much fun playing hide and seek, duck duck goose, games like that. Made me feel alive. Really miss those kids. But now there's Susan. She moved in about 6 months ago. Susan's amazing. Single with no kids, though she does have a cat, Oscar. Oscar doesn't like me at all. Every time I come into the room, he stands up, curls his back, and hisses at me like he's ready to attack. I don't want any trouble. I just leave Oscar alone. Susan goes to work early every morning and doesn't return until late at night. Sometimes after dark. I don't know exactly what she does for a living, but I'm sure I will find out eventually. She spends most of her days off just watching Hallmark movies and eating lots of ice cream. Don't understand why, but as pretty as she is, she can do whatever she likes. Susan's about 5'4" tall, late 20s, maybe early 30s. Beautiful long brown hair, these amazing green eyes. Voice like an angel. Susan may be one of the most beautiful women I've seen in a long time. And she's not, her housekeeping skills leave a lot of people. Not like she's a slob or anything, but doesn't really clean up after herself very well. So on occasion, while she's at work, just to help out, I will pick up the cups and dishes from around the house and put them in the sink. Pick up her clothes. I don't know what kind of perfume she uses, but Dart does as well. Anyway, I put her clothes into the hamper, of course, and sweep the floor. Turn off the lights. That's things like that. Nothing major, just the basics. Nothing intrusive. It always makes me happy to see the smile on her face when she comes home and sees the house straightened up. She just stands there smiling, and she always says thank you. Anything for you, Susan. Anything. I'm so taken by Susan that sometimes at night I like to go and stand at her bedroom door just to watch her sleep. It looks so peaceful. I'd like nothing more than lay beside her with my arms around her waist and just... Maybe someday. I know it's only been a little while, but I think I'm falling in love with her. To tell her how I feel. Show her. I think I'll do it tonight when she gets home. That. Got a folder on the table. HPRC. Hamilton Paranormal Research Center. Case file 137. Paranormal. Never seen this before. She must have left it behind when she left for work today. I'll just take a peek. Hey, that's a picture of Susan. What does it say underneath? Lead investigator. Wow, sounds important. Here's a letter. I'll read the writing. I hereby give my permission to any member of the HPRC to live in my residence for the sole purpose of obtaining evidence of paranormal activity within and assist in removal of said activity. I can't read the signature, but there's that word again. There's more. Newspaper clipping from 1974. What does it say? Yesterday, the only son, Michael, age 17, a respected banker, William Bernard, and his wife, Emily, is found dead in an apartment accidental fall from the attic door to the hallway below. Cause of death, broken neck. Incident occurred in their home at 19 Chestnut Street. Wait, Michael Bernard, that's my name. My address. Those are my parents. What? I can't be dead. I can see, I can feel, I can touch, I can remember the fall, I remember getting up. I remember my mother coming up the stairs crying because I fell. I was looking at me, at the dead me on the floor. I remember now. Men in suits coming over, taking my body away. My relatives coming over. Oh, I understand now. That explains everything. Why Mr. Reynolds never answered me when I talked to him. He couldn't see me, he couldn't hear me. Why the stoners thought I was a hallucination because in their theater mind they could see me. They just thought they were imagining it. Why the parents of the children would always ask their kids who we were talking to, then scream at me to leave their kids alone. Couldn't see me either. Why her cat hates me. Why my parents just up and left one day. I thought they left me in the house. Come to think of it, I haven't seen them in years. And why Susan was smiling when I cleaned up. It wasn't because I did it. She was looking for evidence of my existence. She wants to get rid of me. I don't want to leave. I like it here. This is my house. I'm not leaving without a fight. Wants evidence? Oh, I'll give her evidence. I really loved her. I helped her. I even tolerated her damn cat. Well, screw all that. I've been nice so far, but after this, Mr. Nice Guy. She'll be home soon. I'll wait right here. She comes to the door. Game on. That ends the first piece of evidence in the box. That, I mean, this can't be real, right? I mean, not like a ghost can give a written account that changes to a first person one. No way. Well, listen, I imagine the folks over at the Hamilton Paranormal Research Center filed it as due diligence. The next file is apparently from them specifically, so it is, of course, much more. It should include some real evidence. Certainly not an issue. Let's take a peek. This is the second part. It looks to be, on first glance, a translation and audio stenography. The original audio and video appears to have been not included in the box, or maybe it was destroyed, who knows. It's just not here. This is the only record we have of it. And it is signed by David Weinhardt, the director of operations at HPRC. So this has the ring of something, at least a little bit more put together. So let's hope that works out. Oops. I dropped the paper. I'm sorry. Okay. Another glass of water. Get the heebie-jeebies out of me for half a second. You know, I know we're going to be doing a lot of these here in this room, but I mean, I wish there was at least one other person around. It's just me in this place, and I mean, I can see the entire room, but that's not the point. Alright. Let's see here. Alright, so here we are. What you're about to read is a dramatized audio translation of the events that occurred at 19 Chestnut Street, July 15th, 25th, 2018, starting at approximately 9:08 p.m., ending at approximately 9:27 p.m. Translation was taken from video surveillance cameras and audio microphones placed in the living areas, kitchen, upstairs hallway, and master bedroom of the home. Translation goes as follows, and from here on out, I will be using the timestamps before I continue. 9:08 p.m. Susan Mayer, former lead investigator of the Hamilton Paranormal Research Center, arrives at the home and enters through the front door. 9:09 p.m. A small manila folder, sitting on the coffee table, begins to shake and eventually takes flight in the direction of Miss Mayer, striking her between the eyes, causing a small cut on her skin and tiny droplets of blood to flip her face. 9:10 p.m. A large curio cabinet to her right seems to move out by itself about 3 inches from the wall and crash to the floor in front of her, pinning her between it and the front door, at which time Miss Mayer screams, "Michael, why are you doing this?" 9:11 p.m. A low humming sound is heard. Volume intensifies and forms what appears to be a voice saying, "This is my house," in a faltering cadence. 9:12 p.m. All lights under surveillance start turning off and on by themselves. Doors open and closing repeatedly. Front door opens so hard that it strikes Miss Mayer in the back, knocking her over the broken cabinet and onto the floor, dropping her purse. 9:13 p.m. What appears to be a strong gust of wind blows through the living area so hard that it knocks over a table lamp and several knickknacks off the shelves, sending them crashing to the floor. 9:15 p.m. From the floor, Miss Mayer screams, "Michael, stop. I know this is your house. I know. Stop." 9:16 p.m. A small cat enters from the frame from bottom left corner of the screen and immediately flies backwards off the screen. Sound of it hitting a wall and scurrying away is heard soon after. 9:18 p.m. All activity stops. Mayor stands, grabbing her purse, and says, Michael, listen to me. I know you're mad. I don't want you to leave. I want you to stay. I quit my job today to be with you. I want to be with you here in this house. 9:21 p.m. What appears to be a large mass of black fog appears on camera, forming what looks like a roughly person shape. 9:22 p.m. Staring directly into the fog, Miss Mayer says, Michael, I can finally see you. I love you. I love everything you do for me, and now we'll always be together. 9:24 p.m. Reaching into her purse, Miss Mayer produces a small handgun and places it to her temple. 9:25 p.m. All video surveillance cameras shut down and lose its signal. The audio remains. 9:26 p.m. One single gunshot is heard, and the sound of something heavy hitting the floor. 9:27 p.m. All transmissions are lost completely. After this, the timestamps cease, and we have an official statement from the director of the HPRC. It begins. The body of Susan Mayer was found dead after a neighbor called 911 to report what sounded like a gunshot. Officers arrived on the scene to find the house in disarray and Mrs. Mayer's bloody corpse lying on the floor in the living area, the victim of an apparent suicide. The body was taken to the county morgue where cause of death was confirmed. The results for case 137 are as follows. The home was believed to be completely consumed by a malevolent evil spirit. Any further investigation may result in injury and or death of another member of this organization. I will not take that risk. Case 137 is now closed. My condolences to the Mayer family. Signed, David Weinhardt, Director of Operations, HPRC. This appears to be a step-by-step cenography of a video that existed at some point. However, some of the elements seem to be so fantastical that, honestly, without the video, it's hard to corroborate, folks. Honestly, anyone watching this, I think we should probably be disregarding any mention of black masses and voices that do not appear to be on the tape, just in case. Unfortunately, Miss Mayer appears to have suffered some sort of traumatic episode, and unfortunately taken her own life. That, at least, is verifiable. I double-checked with coroner's office records from the timestamps. Seems to have actually happened. As for 19 Chestnut Street, it appears that no one else has taken up residence since this particular incident. Not overly surprising, considering how folks tend to deal with strange deaths. But, that's neither confirmation of a spirit or anything else like that. Regardless, this file number has been committed to this tape, and I will go and fetch another box. I will return shortly. Alright, that took a bit. You know, some of these things are stacked pretty precariously. I mean, would it have killed them to really use a regular goddamn filing system? There are filing stacks here. They're full of other things. One of them had a squirrel in it. Okay, fine. Fine. I have another case file here. I'm gonna read it like normal. Alright. This is still tape 1, Master Collection, Paranormal Institute, Investigator 32. This story does not have a case file attached to it. So, you know what? We're just gonna start labeling them. This is now case file 1. Should it be 2? The other one was from Hamilton Paranormal Institute. You know? So, that had its own case file that we were borrowing. So, it shouldn't have ours. You know what? We'll deal with the nomenclature for everything a little later. Now, we're calling this case file 1. This one is entitled It Really Happened. You know, while I was leafing through a bunch of these, there's a lot of them that say some variation of This Really Happened, or I'm Not Crazy. So, I don't want to say that off test too much, but, you know, a little more conciseness to your titles. If any of you are, who are listening to the tape are going to be eventually making a statement of your own, which, given the people who would be listening to the tape, is not far out of the truth. Okay. Alright. Anyways, I've done my griping. I'm fine. This one is another handwritten account. It seems to have been written by the person making the account. So there's that. Another pro tip, folks, get your investigators to type out the accounts, because, boy, handwriting. Okay, I will do my best. Here we go. I would like to share with you an experience I had about 10 years ago, give or take. I learned several years after this. What happened to me is what doctors call sleep paralysis. I say they're full of shit. It really happened. I do not use drugs, outside of caffeine and nicotine. I do not drink alcohol, of any sort. This was not a hallucination caused by either of the two, nor do I have any mental issues that I know of. Let's make that clear. Going back about a year before this incident, at the time, I was really into ghost hunting shows. I watched and recorded any and every show I could find that was about a team of ghost hunters investigating haunted places. Some were really good, and others just sucked. No disrespect. I remember watching an episode of, right, in order to post that on here, I can't use any real places or addresses. Okay, let's see if I can do this. I remember watching the show where the lead hunter guy is a muscle-bound jerk. Don't like bullies, but in turn is one himself. He orders his crew around like he owns them. They follow him blindly like sheep. I think you know the one. It's a good show. Lacey used to be. Anyways, they were investigating. Oh shit. Here we go again. They were investigating a bar owned by an old country singer located in one of the southern states who wrote a semi-popular song about it. Everyone in the paranormal community says this place is really haunted. Okay, now that's over with. Back to the story. They were down in the basement, I think. It's been a while since I've seen it, and to this day is the only episode of that show I will never watch again. They were talking with some guy about what goes on there, and up in the left top corner of the screen, there appeared a shadow figure wearing a cowboy hat standing in the doorway. At this time in the show, they stopped the film, pointed out that that when they were actually down there, they didn't see this figure and only discovered it while reviewing the footage. I was naive back then and didn't really know much about paranormal. I figured it's a TV show, what harm could it really do? Boy, was I wrong. I know that ghosts, entities, or whatever you want to call them, can follow you home from places that are made up of energy and can travel through any energy source they want, and this one did. Now that I've given you the backstory to this story, let's proceed with the reason I'm actually writing this. Many years before this incident, an old friend of mine, back when I was 11 or 12, who I met through playing baseball in the same team, anyway, he had recently bought a house and was going to just give his old trailer mobile home to, which is where this is. We lost contact over the years, but unbeknownst to me, he had kept contact with my father. My father gave him my number, he called me up, and made me an offer I couldn't refuse. A free trailer, just pay lot rent. Oh hell yeah, I'll take it. The trailer was old and needed work, but it was a good deal. I moved in, did some minor repairs, and a couple weeks after that I invited my father and stepmother over for dinner. Stepmother is what she calls an old soul. She can sense when things are not right with the universe. She took one look at the place and said, "There's bad juju here, I don't like it." Every time she came to visit, she was nervous. She wouldn't sit still, always looking down the hallway. She eventually stopped coming. She said it was too thick for her, whatever that meant. I just thought she was nuts. I know now she's not. I lived there for many years. Had some strange things happen. Seeing apparitions out of the corner of my eye, voices, cold breezes, etc. I just chalked it up to bad lighting, outside noises, insulation issues, some rational explanation until that night. The night, the thing that changed my whole belief system forever. The night I will never forget. I was laying in bed, asleep on my back, like I always do. When I woke up, I noticed the black figure standing in the doorway of my bedroom. The hallway light was on. I always leave it on in case I need to make a bathroom run late at night. The light from behind the figure showed it had a head, 2 arms, and 2 legs, but no eyes. Just standing there. I blinked a couple times to make sure I was seeing what I was seeing, and sure enough, I was. Only this time, when I looked at it, wearing a cowboy hat. The moment I realized that, I physically saw it jump from the standing position of the doorway over top of bed and land on top of me. My body became stiff, unable to move. Out of my peripheral vision, I could see my wife lying next to me. I tried to scream, but nothing came out. I saw the figure sitting on top of me. It reached its hands down into my chest and started squeezing my lungs. I could breathe, squeezing the life right out of me. There it was, gasping for air, paralyzed, unable to make it. Just when I thought I was about to die, a series of intensely bright white lights started flashing all around the room like a strobe light on steroids. I closed my eyes and shielded them from the lights, but that bright. All of a sudden, my body jerked a couple times like a convulsion, then stopped. I opened my eyes and it was gone. Able to breathe again. I lied there, heavy breathing, for a good 20 minutes, too scared to move. When I finally got the nerve to try, I slowly moved my right hand over to the nightstand, still shaking from fear. I grabbed my phone to check the time, like I always do when I wake up in the middle of the night. This time, it was 3:48 a.m., the witching hour. Needless to say, I did not go back to sleep that night. I cautiously got out of bed, so as not to wake up my wife, and turned on every light in the house, every single one, including all the bedroom lights. How my wife stayed sleeping, I don't know, but thankfully she did. Made a pot of coffee, grabbed my Bible, and sat at the dining room table drinking coffee, Bible in hand, until the morning came. I must have smoked at least a pack and a half of cigarettes in the 3-hour time span. I'm good with that. I'm still alive. I asked my wife if she had seen or heard anything strange the night before. She said no, and I left it at that. I didn't tell her what had happened, and I still haven't. She probably wouldn't believe me anyway. My wife and I stayed at the trailer for about 2 months after that. We got the opportunity to rent an actual house. We took it. We packed all of our things and moved out. On the last day we were ever at the trailer, my wife had left the vacuum in the back bedroom where this experience happened. She asked if I could go get the vacuum, and I agreed. Upon entering the room, a weird sense of dread fell over me, and something inside of me told me I needed to get out of there quick. I grabbed the vacuum, ran down the hallway, and out the front door as fast as I could, slamming the door behind me. I then turned around and yelled, "You want this place? You can have it. I'm gone." My wife looked at me like I had lost my mind. My father and stepmother helped us move, along with some friends. My stepmother insisted that we drive all the vehicles that contained our belongings over bodies of water to block any of the bad juju from coming with us to the new house. We did, and have had no bad experiences in our new house, aside from a few bad dreams. I had the couple of nights we were in there, well, the first couple of nights we were there. The trailer, about the trailer, but that was it. Well, that's my story. I don't really care if you believe me or not. I know for a fact. It really happened. Well, as an investigator, it's hard to take these sort of first-hand experiences and type of seriously. The account begins with the writer admitting that they are fond of paranormal shows. The one they reference specifically having to do with, quite clearly, I believe, Bobby Mackey's, a place infamous in paranormal hunting lore. Uh, well, listen, that aside from that place being looked at by every paranormal investigation team in the country, in several countries, I should mention, and never finding any majorly conclusive evidence, and pairing that with the fact that this person ingests quite a lot of paranormal media, coupled with what he says even that doctors call sleep paralysis. I believe we have a very cut and dried case here of someone just getting a little bit too frightened. That's all. Nothing too strenuous. I double checked the records. From what I could find, there was indeed a trailer owned by this person. The details of this person, of course, I am keeping confidential, along with the paper that was added to the box. However, I could not verify any sort of paranormal activity. The trailer still exists. It is currently inhabited by someone else who has said that they are not experiencing anything currently. The trailer in question is indeed crafty, old, kept up, but honestly, pretty ramshackle. I'm not surprised the person was inside hearing noises. I'm going to file this with the unsubstantiated pile, and we will move on to the next one. Alright. Here's another one. This one, uh, quite a lengthy statement. Typed. Thankfully. Amazing. This one has a code number as well attached to it, but it doesn't fit anything from, even the company that the Ontario Paranormal Institute actually took over from. So, I'm just gonna put case file number 2. Alright, Master Collection, Ontario Paranormal Institute, tape number 1, case file number 2, Investigator 32 speaking. Like I said, this is a rather lengthy, account, and it seems to drift in some places, but other than that, it's certainly be, a legitimate account, and down by some sort of, stenographer or investigator at the very least who knew how to type, add down written account. And so I will treat it as an actual account. We will commit it to tape. Alright, here we go. My name, Nicholas Abernathy. My friends call me Nick. I'm 32 years old with a very, very, very sound mind. I am not crazy. Although crazy people don't know they're crazy, I'm 99% sure of. About a year ago, I lived at 253 Dead Man's Lane, small town in Delaware. I can't remember, but that is where the story takes place. There's a reason they call it Dead Man's Lane. I know that now. I don't live there anymore. I now reside at an undisclosed location due to the events that occurred at my previous residence. I don't want them to know where I am. I hope you understand. The town was a very small town. A one-stoplight town. A town so small that if you blink while driving through the entire town, which was perfect for me. It was a welcome escape from the hustle and bustle of city life, which was slowly draining me to the point of exhaustion. When my boss at the time came to me that our company was downsizing and that I would be let go, I gladly took the severance package and moved on with my life. I grew up in a small town, so I was familiar with the quiet and simplicity that it offered, and I longed to go back there again. So while sitting in my big city apartment, I grabbed my laptop and started to search small town living, houses for sale, things of that sort. I came upon an old Victorian house built in 1809. It was beautiful. Dark blue with gray trim, chewed floors, balcony, front porch, and a very small top of the house with an octagon-shaped window in it. For some unknown reason, I've always wanted to live in such a house. So this was like a dream come true. The price wasn't bad, actually. It was pretty good, low, I might say. So I called the number displayed in the ad and made arrangements with the older gentleman on the other end to come view the house 3 days later. Upon arriving at the house, it looked just like the picture in the ad. There was one small detail the ad did not say. The house was in the middle of a giant dirt field all by itself. Trees, no shrubbery. Just dirt field. That time of year, some farmers should have had corn or something growing in that big field, but there was nothing. It struck me as kind of odd. The only thing besides the house in that field was one electric pole with wires running from it to the house and a transformer on top. The driveway was at least a quarter-mile long with other little roads branching off to go to certain parts of the field, then connecting back to the main driveway. One road wrapped around the entire house. It seemed to go like forever to get there. But once there, I met an old man who said his name was Bernie or Benny or something with a B. I can't really remember. He said he was the owner of the house and that I could feel free to look around if I wanted. I asked if he was coming in, and his face turned pale as he said, "No, I'll stay right here, thank you." Looking back now, that should have been a red flag. An owner that wouldn't go into his house. Red flag alert. But I was naive, and I put off and entered the house alone. I expected it to be a little run down and dirty, given the dirt field that surrounded it, but to my surprise, it was immaculately clean. completely furnished and looking like something straight out of a magazine. I went through each room in total awe of its beauty. Each room except the little room with the octagon window. I couldn't find a door or staircase leading to it. This too I found a little odd, and the basement. I've never been a big fan of basements, so I figured I'll go check it out at some point. What's the big deal? It's the basement. I met up with the old man outside and we discussed and agreed on a price. He informed me that everything in the house was included in the deal under one condition. No furniture could be removed from the home or moved to any other part of the home. Everything must stay exactly where it is. You may use any of the appliances, books, anything of that sort, but they must be returned exactly where they are now. You may add to it, but nothing can be removed. Given that all the furniture and such was from the Victorian era, I thought, why get rid of it, and agreed to his condition. In agreement, I would regret. I'm going to skip the part about going to the bank and financing all that crap. No one really cares about that anyway. Moving in day was exciting for me. I finally got the house of my dreams. I just started a new job. I'm back in the quiet life. I left all my furniture and stuff at my old apartment, only packing my clothes and toiletries. I figured maybe the next guy or girl could use some of it. Anyway, I met the old man at the house. I'm just going to call him Mr. B, since I can't seem to remember the man's name. I later found out that Mr. B lived just 2 blocks away with his wife of 43 years, Isabella. I never got the chance to meet Isabella, although I wish I had. He was an old steel mill worker. You could tell from his physique. He may have been old, but that man had muscle. He had bought the house some 30 years back with the same conditions that he had told me. Never lived in the place. Said it troubled his wife immensely from the first day she saw it. Tried to sell it many times before, but the deals always fell through for some reason. Till then, Mr. B handed me the keys, and as he did, he grabbed hold of my hand and pulled me to him and whispered something in my right ear. He whispered, "Beware of the rain." There's a reason he said that to me. I know that now. He then hung his head and slowly walked away. How he knew, I don't know, but he did. My first couple of weeks in my new house were rather uneventful. Weather was nice, with a slight breeze. Even opened a couple of windows upstairs to get some airflow in there. I had asked Mr. B about opening the windows. He said it was fine since they were part of the house, not possessions within the house, so I left them open for a few days. On my first night, since the place was fully furnished, I hung up my clothes and took all of 20 minutes. I put my shampoos and such in the master bathroom, which was almost as big as my bedroom. Then went to the local grocery store for some food and drinks. Can't remember the name, it's not really that important. I spent the rest of the time checking out each room one by one and seeing everything the house had to offer. About a week or so later, I finally found that door that led to the little room with the octagon window. It was a secret door panel hidden in the closet of the room that I decided to make my bedroom. For some unknown, strange reason, something told me to push on the back wall of the closet, and I did. The door swung open, revealing a spiral black metal staircase that led to said room. It was a very small room, about the size of a walk-in closet by today's standards. In said room was a very old desk, positioned just under the octagon window, and a stand-up lamp to its left. Old wooden planks for walls as well as the ceiling. The floor was what looked to be brand new hardwood, so I decided to make it my office. The place I would do my writing. Since I had a great view of the dirt field outside the window, what better place to draw inspiration from? That's a joke, by the way. The rest of the house consisted of 5 bedrooms, a huge kitchen, a parlor, a living area, 3 full bathrooms, a study, and a basement. That basement. I decided to check it out one night. I was bored and needed something to do. That was a bad idea. The basement was kind of creepy. I'm lying, it was real creepy. The door to the basement had little holes all along the edges, top, bottom, and right side of the door, like someone had nailed it shut at some point. The stairs leading down to the basement were old and rickety and probably fall apart at any given moment. Unlike the rest of the house, that was immaculately clean, like I noted in previous passages, the basement, however, was not. There was dust and dirt and cobwebs everywhere. Strange odor. I didn't know what it was at the time, but I know now. Along the far wall, there was a series of 5 filing cabinets covered in dust. Over to the right, it looked like 2 metal surgical tables covered in white sheets. In the middle of these tables, There was a small stand with a large glass container and tubes running out of it, some kind of pump machine behind it. All kinds of knives, gloves, and masks scattered all over the floor. Looked like no one had been down here in ages. Ran up the stairs as quickly as I could, shut the basement door, and never went down there again. What was that place? About a month or so went by. All this time, I couldn't get what Mr. B whispered to me on the day I moved in out of my head. So every morning while drinking coffee, I really miss coffee. Anyway, I would check the weather app on my phone to see the conditions of the day. On that day, it was going to be partly cloudy with a 60% chance of rain. Okay, maybe now we'll see what there is to be so afraid of. Just like the app said, it started to rain at about 4 p.m. Didn't last long, but that's how it all started. I was in my office. Rain started to fall. Almost as soon as it did, I started to hear music. Not today's music, but orchestra music. Good band music. I have a radio up there. I'm in the middle of a field. It could be a car. I started to get concerned. Where's it coming from? Walked down the spiral staircase to my room, still hearing it play. Walked into the hallway, into the room across from mine. I put my hand on the doorknob. It stopped. Rain did too. That was weird, I thought. Must have been my imagination. The rain hitting the gutters, somehow making the acoustic sounds of music in the house. Something. There had to be a reason. After a while, I stopped thinking about it and went on with my night. 2 days later, I ran into Mr. B at the hardware store. I told him about what had happened, and he didn't seem surprised. He just said, "What did he tell you?" and left. The day that changed my life forever happened about 2 weeks later. I was at work. I had taken an assistant manager position at a local department store. The pay wasn't as good as my previous job, but it wasn't as stressful either. During my shift, this guy came up to me out of nowhere and asked, "You own the old Bennett place out there on Dead Man's Lane, don't you?" I was reluctant to answer, but I finally said, yes, I do." The big guy, biker type, 50-ish with long gray hair and tats. He said, "Braver than I am. I wouldn't go near that place. Hope you found Jesus, you're gonna need him." The ride home that day was unsettling. Everything that had happened was starting to get to me. I was nervous to go home. After what this guy said and Mr. B said and the music thing with that weird basement, I was on edge. On edge so much that when I walked through the door, instead of placing my keys on the shelf by the door, I tossed my keys, hitting a small ceramic ballerina knick-knack off the shelf and breaking it. "Ah, shit," I said loudly. Something has not only been moved, but broken. There's no way to put it back. Then I heard it. A slow, growling sound like a wild animal coming from the basement door. Then up from the kitchen, then from upstairs, then from everywhere. I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my head and fell to my knees, falling over into the fetal position. I started screaming, "Stop! Stop, I'm sorry, please stop." It didn't stop. It got louder and louder. The floor, I could see the basement door open quickly, then slam shut. All the doors were doing it now, except the front door that remained closed for some reason. I felt a very cold breeze go right through my body. Every light in the house was turned on and off and on and off. I managed to get to my feet, running down the hallway towards the kitchen. The main floor bathroom door flung open, hitting me hard and knocking me backwards down the hallway. I lost my footing and fell to the floor. I must have hit my head, because the next thing I remember I was waking up on the floor hearing the sound of my doorbell buzzing over and over again. All was silent and calm except for the buzzing. The buzzing soon turned to loud pounding upon the front door. I pulled myself together, standing, to answer the door, when I heard, "Nick! Nick, I know you're in there, Nicholas. Answer the damn door." I opened the door quickly to see Mr. B standing there, shaking, sweating, not nearly the composed man I knew. "There's a really bad storm coming. We need to get you out of here. I can't, with all good conscience, let you stay there alone. We've got to get you out now." The storm clouds moved in fast, at a speed I've never seen before. Thunder started to roar. I tried to explain to Mr. B that I had broken a knick-knack. In his panicked state, he said, "That's the least of your worries, let's go." The rain started falling hard. Lightning was crashing as the thunder roared on. That music started playing again, only this time Mr. B heard it as well. Then what happened next seemed like something out of a bad horror movie. The house seemed to suck Mr. B into it, nearly knocking me down in the process and sliding him fast across the floor, slamming him into a table that laid against the adjacent wall, breaking the leg of the table and forcing it crashing to the floor. Another thing broken. The front door slammed with a force so hard that it broke the two front windows completely out, allowing the rain to pour into the house. I quickly ran over to see Mr. B was okay. Son of a bitch, it's too late. We're never getting out of here now, Mr. B said angrily. The growling started again, and this time it seemed like it was right in front of us. I felt a really bad burning on my left arm. I lifted my sleeve to see what it was. I saw 3 scratch marks with blood dripping from the third. Mr. B, grabbing hold of his neck after lifting his hand. I noticed the same 3 scratches, only this time all of them were bleeding. Bleeding bad. The house is coming alive, he screamed. Upstairs, we must get upstairs. A lightning bolt hit the electric pole outside, causing the house to go black. Now in total darkness, hearing the music, hearing that growling, both of us bleeding, I quickly pulled out my phone to turn on the light so we could at least see by that. Mr. B's phone was broken in the crash. I turned on my light, only to notice the cellar door slowly opening by itself, the growling getting louder, and what appeared to be a black mass of goo pouring from the basement door and heading in our direction fast. I screamed, "Look out," and grabbed Mr. B by the arm and pulled him out of the way, barely escaping the goo. We ran frantically up the stairs. What should have been 20 or 25 steps seems to take more like 30 or 40. The house is alive, Mr. B yelled. Finally reaching the top, I shined the light down the hallway of doors that was the second floor. The hallway seemed to be longer than I remembered, with extra doors that I never had before. The walls were expanding and contracting like the house was breathing. There was a red substance resembling blood, include them for all I know, oozing from the ceiling down the walls. Pardon me. The inscription gets a little shaky here. My bedroom was at the end of the hallway, Mr. B, and Mr. B and I made for the last door on the left, my bedroom. We ran and ran, just as the red goo was about to hit the floor. I arrived at my bedroom door, grabbing the knob and opening it quickly, looking back to see Mr. B right behind me, but unfortunately he was not. Shining my light down the hallway, I could see that he was about a quarter of the way from the door, running as fast as he could, but getting nowhere. It was like he was running on a treadmill. The red substance oozed down on the floor. He made a beeline straight for Mr. B. I screamed, "Give me your hand," and I stretched my hand out as far as I could. Mr. B extended his, but it was too late. The red substance reached his shoe. Mr. B screamed in agony as the substance began to burn him. The smell of burning flesh filled the hallway as more of the substance reached him. Mr. B ignited into flames. I could still hear his screams in my head. It only lasted a few seconds, and then it was gone, and so my friend. Mr. B was gone. I quickly ran into my room. From out of my bedroom window, I could see what appeared to be flames. When the lightning hit the pole, it must have caused the transformer to catch fire, igniting the house as well. The outside of the house was burning, but not the inside, and the rain was stopping it. Wasn't stopping it, rather. What the hell is this place? Shining my light back into the room, I could see the shadows in the shape of people appearing on the wall. Some short, some tall, some voices. They all started shouting, "I'm cold," or "Mommy," or "Help me." I quickly ran up to my office, the only place left to go. From out of the window, I could see the rain pouring down, lightning bolts lighting up the skies. Voices continued. Down below, I could see the rain had fallen so hard and fast that it washed away all the dirt in the field, exposing skeletal remains all around the house. And it hit me. My God, this was not a house. It was an old funeral home built on cemetery grounds. They must have removed the headstones and left the bodies. That would explain everything. In shock, I stepped backwards, my back hitting the wall, sliding down to a seating position. My phone had fallen to the floor. The light just so happened to be shining on the doorway to the room. I mumbled to myself, I didn't know. Out of the corner of my eye, I could see a black mass in the shape of a person crawling through the doorway and over to me. Making a horrible sound, it reached out its hand like it was going to choke me. Totally exhausted, I put my hand over my eyes and screamed as the shadow engulfed my room. Somebody, somewhere, must have seen the flames. Called the fire department. From speaking with my landlord and police officials, I gathered they had found me. I was in the basement, laying on one of the tables, mumbling to myself. I don't recall any of that. Mr. B's body was never recovered. I told the story to the police and some guy dressed like Judge Judy, and they all told me that I was crazy. I'm not crazy. I like my new apartment. Kind of small, like a studio apartment. Got a bed, a dresser, a nightstand, and a lamp. Best of all, the rent is free. I don't have to work anymore. My neighbors are nice. A little quirky if you ask me, but nice nonetheless. There's a TV that we share in the living room, a game room that we gather and play cards and ping pong games and that sort. I have my own bathroom, which is nice. Food is included. Mostly just mush, but it's still food. Security here is tight. There are cameras everywhere, and there are rules. If you break those rules, the landlord will move you to a much smaller apartment with no windows, but gives you a very cool jacket you wear. Lets you hug yourself. I like that jacket. There are a bunch of nice ladies that come by, giving us little white pieces of tea. Sometimes they're different colors, but mostly white. Sometimes they even come at night. Oh, I gotta go now. It's bedtime. Excited. Tomorrow we go outside. Good night. I'm having a hard time believing that this isn't a joke of some sort. Very horror movie-esque. It contains all of the tropes, including a very stereotypical explanation or description of a mental institution at the very end. I don't know what to make of that specifically. The beginning of the account starts off fairly well. Unfortunately, trying to find a specific Dead Man's Lane in Delaware is like trying to find a specific hay piece in a giant haystack. However, there are a few things that ring true. I did happen to come across a former funeral home located 253 Dead Man's Lane in a small town in Delaware that will remain nameless. It stood in a field that had at one point been a graveyard that had indeed been expropriated. However, from the city archives that I was able to pull, there were certainly no bodies left behind when the city changed the graveyard into a place building on. The home in question has not even been there for a very long time. Although there is a recorded death on the site after the home having been recorded to have burned down, and that is a Mr. Bernard Halowitz, an elderly gentleman who apparently owns the land. It doesn't say cause of death, however, the death certificate have been damaged in some sort of fire at the local station as well, or to be fair, someone could have tried to burn it, I'm not sure. As for the person who wrote this, the information was vague enough that I could not find them. And I did, just in case, look into a bunch of long-term care facilities and institutions around that time period and area, but unfortunately no such luck. I am going to file this under the unsubstantiated pile, if only because, while being terribly specific, this seems like it's much more of a fun fiction size for whoever wrote it. Shame about Mr. Bernard. Get another one. Alright. I went back to the filing cabinet that had previously had a squirrel in it. I figured the filing cabinet had to have at least been better organized, provided there was no squirrel leavings on them. So I opened up one of the other drawers, and yes, there were indeed a couple of files. I picked up this first folder, and it actually has two short accounts in them. They don't seem to be related, but I might as well commit to tape now. So, Master Collection, Ontario Paranormal Institute, Investigator 32, Tape 1, Account number 3. When I was younger, I'd go visit my grandparents all the time. They lived in a one-floor house with an unfinished basement. I never liked it down there. It felt small for a big basement. There was a little door down there that was for storage. I always got a horrible feeling when I going close to it, and let me add that this was a newer house that was about 6 years old. Now, during the time I was about 6 or 7, I felt so uncomfortable going down there even when I was with someone. I didn't like it. I remember going down there with my grandma to help with something. We had to run upstairs because someone rang the doorbell, and she said she would be right back, even though she knew how I felt about being alone down there. But I nodded and said, okay. She was gone and I was alone. I started to get a bad feeling in the pit of my stomach. I didn't move, and I didn't want to move. Even though the lights were on now, this is where everything started happening, and it still gives me chills. The lights started to flicker, and I started to hear noises, and it sounded like talking. Not coming from upstairs, but in the storage room. I heard someone say my name. And here is the part that freaks me out the most. The voice sounded like my grandma. I was confused as hell. How am I hearing her when she's upstairs? I didn't want to move, but me being the curious one, I started moving towards the storage room door. The closer I got, the worse the bad feeling came. When I got to the door, the lights turned off in the basement. I wanted to run upstairs and hide, go somewhere that wasn't the basement. I heard my name again for the second time. My grandma's voice asked me to open the door to help her, so I did, and I regret it. I couldn't see anything. It was pitch black. Couldn't hear anything but faint laughing. It felt like forever, but laughing stopped and the lights turned back on in the basement, and I felt a little bit better with the lights on. But the downside was I could see the little storage room. I saw a small clown doll in the storage room. My grandma hates clowns with a passion and wants nothing to do with them. So why is there a clown doll? I have no damn idea. When the lights turned on in the storage room, I saw red that looked like blood all over the place. I screamed and backed out, and the next thing I knew, I was lying on the couch. My grandma looking at me, asking if I was okay. I have no idea if it was real or a dream. Sure as hell felt real. If you find any ideas, let me know. There are a lot of accounts of paranormal activity around creepy dolls. Honestly, at this point in my career, I have seen so many that I don't know if it's a real phenomena or just something that people ascribe to creepy dolls because they are creepy. I know I don't like creepy dolls. They're creepy. However, there's unfortunately not much to go on in this. The person leaving this account left their name and contact address, but unfortunately, they both appear to not be around anymore. At least as far as I could tell. The house in question, unfortunately, I could not find any evidence of either, but only because, of course, I wasn't given the address specifically. I'm willing to ascribe this more to the terrified imagination of a 6 or 7-year-old, alone in a dark basement. Many other things have been concocted by young minds, and I'm willing to let that one go. With unsubstantiated evidence, I'm going to place this in the unsubstantiated pile. Now, the other account, My bosses have been very clear that I am to stop calling them stories. The other account is another, how, Lord help me, handwritten. It appears to be relatively recent, 3 years ago. There is actual mention of this place. So, excellent. I will do some research and get right back to you. Alright. That was a couple of hours, but the research is relatively done now. Just wanted to do my due diligence before I came back on tape. Sorry about that, folks. Alright, handwritten account. Master Collection, Ontario Paranormal Institute, tape number 1. Account number 4. Titled, A Wendigo Broke Into My House. Investigator 32. Transcribing. Before I begin, I'm a 16-year-old male. About 3 years ago, I was in Virginia visiting family over the summer. We were right outside the DC area and staying in a 2-story house near the freeway. On the other side of the freeway was a forest, so my mom, her boyfriend Eric, and I were staying with Eric's parents. We had brought some night vision binoculars and decided that tonight was the perfect time to use them, so after dinner we gear up and we headed out. We pass under the freeway and head into the woods. We get about 5 minutes into the forest, we set down our bag, take out our binocs. My mom looks around with them for a while, seeing a few squirrels here and there. She gets tired of them and passes them to me. I look around for a while, being careful not to look at the freeway for fear of being blinded. I spot something behind a tree about 50 feet to our left. Concentrate on it, trying to figure out what it is. It looks like a pale, bald, anorexic man looking straight at us from behind a tree. I get a bit uneasy, but I'm hesitant to believe it's really there. I ask Eric to take a look, just in case. To my despair, he sees it too. He describes it much in the same way I did. Now, Eric is a former amateur boxer, and I train MMA almost every day, but neither of us wants to stick around with that thing. We start heading back to the house, crossing onto the freeway. We take another look behind us at a car as a car comes by. All three of us see glowing eyes lit up by the headlights on the other side of the freeway. We say, fuck that, and head to the house. When we get back, Aaron's parents are asleep. My mom and Eric go upstairs to the guest room. There's only one guest room, so I have the couch downstairs. I'm a little too excited after seeing the thing in the woods, so I end up staying up all night. Around 3 a.m., I'm watching TV and start hearing footsteps above me. I immediately remember our earlier encounter and panic a little. I try to calm down and tell myself that it's just one of the dogs or maybe someone who couldn't sleep. I keep hearing the footsteps for a while until I hear a doorknob jiggle. I find it weird they're trying to open a locked door, but try to ignore it. They stop, walk around for a few more minutes, and then it's quiet again. I stay up until the sun starts coming up, and then I pass out. My mom wakes me up, and I remember the footsteps from the night before. I describe what happened and ask if one of them got up any time. She says no, and I think it must have been one of the dogs. That is until she tells me that the room above me is the office. No one was in the office, and the door stays locked at night. My heart sinks as I piece it all together. I don't know if it was that thing for sure, but I think it was. I've done a lot of research since then trying to figure out what this thing was that night. I found 2 creatures that seemed to match it. I think it was either a skinwalker or a wendigo. Whichever one it was, I'm just thinking the door was locked. I know I wouldn't be able to fight that thing no matter how tough I am. Well, I see now why these two accounts were in the same folder. Children often make more out of things they see, and especially teenagers. A 16-year-old that trains in MMA every day? That's not real. Absolutely not. I could imagine that this young man is probably training with with his mother's boyfriend Eric here, and Eric might be telling him it's MMA to soothe the boy's ego, but no way someone that young is training in something hardcore as MMA fighting. aside from that, a corroboration from the boyfriend is nice to see. An older person getting a look at it. This could have been something as simple as uh, a regular home invader, as scary as that is. Scarier than some sort of beastie that isn't real, I imagine. Sorry, write another note from my bosses, told me to stop conjecturalizing about the reality of things. I apologize. It could also easily have been someone getting up in their sleep and not telling anyone else, and forgetting which to which, and jiggling. That's also possible. There are a lot of things that people see and hear. It is a place where human imaginations tend to go wild. An albino bear, for instance, that is underfed and undernourished could have easily been the cause of one of those things they saw. However, I was able, in my reading, to corroborate that this place indeed exists, and I was even able to get into contact with family who corroborated the account. So, witnesses corroborate, and I think that's enough to make sure that this particular instance doesn't go in the unsubstantiated pile. However, I'm going to start a dubious pile, and I will put this in that one. I'm going to search for... Oh! Pardon. There's a third account in this box. This folder. I hadn't realized it was stuck to the Wendigo one. Okay. 2, 3. Would be account number 6. Master Collection, Ontario Paranormal Institute, tape number 1, account number 6. Investigator 32, transcribing. This account is typed. It's small. To the point, more or less. Seems to have the ring of a true account to it. Let's put it into record, and then I'll do a tiny bit of research. But the other way around this time. This happened just yesterday, so it's fresh in my mind. I'm not quite sure what to think of it because it was just so bizarre and unbelievable. It might just have been a sleep-deprived fantasy. So last night at 2300, I was walking around my block. My town is relatively safe, so I didn't feel in danger. Plus, it was a pretty night. I had been walking around for 5 minutes when a pale woman with blonde hair and a white dress caught my eye from across the street. She was about my height, looked to be around my age too. I didn't actually pay attention to her after I first noticed her. While I circled the block again, she was on the same street, a couple feet in front of me. She was standing on the curb, staring at the cars passing by. It was a main road, so even that late, people were driving on it. I said hello to her, and she turned to gaze to me. I couldn't see her face super well, but from what I saw, she had no pupils or color in her eyes. She just stared at me. After a while, I asked if she was okay. She didn't respond again and simply pointed at the road. I was really confused and didn't understand. Right as a red car started coming down the road, she stepped onto the road, the car slammed into her, and it was a bloody mess. The driver immediately stopped and jumped out. It was a man in his mid-20s. We both spoke about it, freaking out. He called the police, and I went around the car to see the state of the girl. Once I circled around the car, she was gone. Not gone as in dead, gone as in she wasn't there. Blood on the road was gone too, but not gone from his car. After the police arrived, they concluded that it was some big hoax of a kid and who didn't know what they were talking about, and some guy who went along with it. Blood on the truck was brought to the investigation only to be found as paint. Nothing else was put up about it. I'm still not sure if what happened was real. It felt so real. But I don't believe in the paranormal. I don't know what it was. If it was just a dream or if it was real. I remember it like it was real. I feel like I can't leave the house now. I don't understand anything now, and I kind of feel like I'm going crazy. Has anyone else experienced anything like this? The paint thing has the ring of some sort of street performance. Give me a few minutes. There's a contact information on the other side of this paper. I'm going to contact it. Alright, job done. The young woman in question gave me the exact same description and a location, so I double checked. And there is a police report for a crash happening that day. However, it doesn't make any mention of paint. It doesn't make any mention of blood at all. It's just a simple prank or prankster written on the bottom of the form. Nothing else to it. That's unreliable. I did. The police report was able to give me an actual street location, and I did a little bit of extra digging. And it turns out there was an incident on that same road involving a young woman being hit by a red car some years ago. But that's about as much as I can substantiate. I couldn't tell you if what these folks said was real, if it was some sort of street performance made with lasers and paint afterwards. Official account is that it's a hoax. Corroborating evidence says otherwise, but unfortunately there's not much to stand on there. I am going to put this in the newly made DS pile, but for reasons other than the fact that it was by a 16-year-old boy. Alright. That is this folder done for sure. Yep. Okay, nothing else in there. I'm going to see if there's anything else for me to look into today. Be right back. That damn squirrel came back. Fine. Fine. Well, more things? Not scared of squirrels. Just startled me is all. I really hope the tape wasn't running, actually. I made a sound that probably shouldn't be coming out of a grown man. Journalists? This next piece comes in a box full of evidence. Again, mostly assorted papers. They don't seem to be all connected, but maybe they might be, who knows. It's labeled with the moniker of an older paranormal institute from around here, so maybe this is just the last of their files, who knows. Okay, let's get back to it. Master Collection, Ontario Paranormal Institute, tape number 1, account number 8. Investigator 32, transcribing. Account number 8 is written on a printed and typed sheet. No mention of investigator, but it seems to have been more or less exactly written down as the interviewee. So we'll go with that. Okay. My first experience with the supernatural was one of the terrible life experiences I can remember. It happened when I was young and dumb and wanted to go out into the world and explore. While I was out of my home country of Canada, I witnessed a horror I soon hoped to forget. I had gone on a trip with some buddies to Montana, just below my home province of Alberta. We were originally going to stay in Yellowstone National Park, but decided to head to Glacier National Park first, before camping out at Yellowstone for a few days. We finally reached Glacier Park after a 6-hour drive, and had just enough time to do a little hiking before going to our hotel in the nearby town to rest and move on towards Yellowstone. We'd gotten to the park around 4:30 p.m. and decided it was a great idea to hike after dark, so we hiked up the trail looking at the glorious views of the waterfalls of the Avalanche Creek Trail. The light began to fade rather quickly while we were about 2/3 of the way up, and we had hiked onto the trail about 10 kilometers, so it would take us about 2 hours to walk back from that point. This is when shit goes downhill. Myself and my friends are all outdoorsmen, love to go hiking and travel around Rocky Mountains. But we were still inexperienced when it came to night hiking. The trail we were on wasn't as traveled. At this part of the hike, the trail was hard to follow in the dark, although every now and then we would see a sign that notified us that we were going in the right direction. At some point, maybe 1/3 of the way down the mountain, we ended up going off the trail following a little rabbit trail, thinking it was the correct path. We began to figure out that we were definitely not going the right way as my friend checked his compass, showing we were headed deeper into the Rocky Mountains, miles and miles of forest. This begins the mass panic. My friends and I immediately turn around and begin walking the way we came out of the trail we were following. Didn't look the same, but the trail we were following didn't look the same as it had, or leading us to being even more lost than before. That is when we collectively noticed how quiet it had gone. No insects, no birds, nothing. Dead silence. I knew this was a bad sign as I'm a hunter, and when it gets quiet like this, it means that there's a large predator around and that it's hunting. We had literally become prey to some unknown beast in the woods. We all began getting a sudden spike of anxiety when I let the guys know what was up. That's when we hear it, a noise that brought terror. A guttural howl from up the mountain. It was then followed by many more. My heart went to my throat, and the terror I felt made me shake. Most of my friends did the same, all but the two. The others had already dipped and begun running down the direction opposite the howls. Wow, apologies, folks. The transcribing on the paper here is interesting. Anyways, I will We all followed soon after, running ourselves ragged until we looked behind us and saw the eye shine of something that was much larger than we had anticipated. The eyes were at least 6 feet off the ground and moving towards us fast. That is when we split up, running in random directions, hoping it was never going to happen. I could hear the breath of one 20 feet behind me and gaining. All of a sudden, my friend appears from the trees to my right, and we end up running together until I cut off from him, hoping to escape. I know I left him to die that night, but it was a last-ditch effort that worked out to my advantage. I heard his screams from my left, ran as fast as I could away from them, with tears rolling down my face, as I heard his screams for help and him shrieking in pain. Then nothing never existed. I continued running down the mountain until I see a familiar sight ahead of me. It was one of the trail signs showing how far you were on the trail. I stopped, right where I was, and started running again, hoping to get away from the creatures on the mountain. Another kilometer down the trail, I began hearing howls getting closer and closer. By the moment, it caused me to run even harder. Looking ahead, I see the sign saying parking lot. I zoomed past it in my panic, looking for the keys in my pocket, scrambling towards the only vehicle still left in the parking lot, which was my car. I use my fob to unlock my car from a distance and run as hard as I can towards it, slamming the side of the door and opening it, hopping in and starting the car. I look out of my window towards the trail entrance and see two pairs of eyes staring at me from out of range of the lampposts. They stare at me before disappearing back into the brush as I drive away, never looking back. I arrived at a ranger station by the park entrance and ran inside looking disheveled and terrified. I began telling the ranger at the desk what happened. He then looked at me with a sad face as if he knew something like this would happen and called the search and rescue team to come in the morning and look for them. They were never found. Certainly a harrowing account. The lack of grammar certainly makes it ring a little bit more true, I suppose. I contacted the ranger station mentioned at Glacier National Park. Pardon me. And they confirmed the story. There had been several mountain lion and bear attacks in the area around that time, and a bunch of young men decided it was a good idea to travel up the mountain in darkness. It's true the bodies were never found, and the markings around obvious struggle. The rangers mentioned that they didn't seem to be like any animal that they had ever really seen before. However, sometimes they did mention when a bear or a mountain lion attacks someone in a frenzied state, they can leave many signs that don't look. Certainly unfortunate, but I am going to place this in the not paranormal pile. On to the next one. Once again, same box. This is Master Collection Ontario Paranormal Tape number 1, account number 9. Investigator 32 transcribing. This account is smaller and once again handwritten. There wasn't a whole lot to go off on this one, but I'll talk about the research I did after. Let's begin. Now, this isn't a scary story, but more of a creepy one. My friend's dad's family used to live in the woods near Eureka Springs, Arkansas. My friend's uncle was the oldest of 3 kids, and was allowed to explore the woods on his own, even though he was only about 9. One day he came across a little cottage nestled in the woods. He knocked on the door and was greeted by 2 old ladies who promptly asked for some water, as he had been exploring for hours. The ladies invited him in, gave him milk and cookies, and sat down and talked with him while he pet their white cat. They talked for a while, and they eventually invited him to stay for dinner and spend the night because it was getting dark and he was a ways from home. His parents were pretty used to him being in the woods for nights without coming back, so he accepted without question. He spent the night without incident and returned home the next morning. He visited many more times over the next year, and one day they told him to bring his parents and brothers the next time he came, so the next week the whole family embarked on the long trip to the cottage. When they arrived, however, they found the remains of a small cottage that appeared to have been abandoned for years. Everybody was very confused. They all trusted my friend's uncle had visited the women times. They had absolutely no idea what had happened, or if my friend's uncle had actually been visiting anybody. I think it's even weirder, as they were leaving, an old, skinny white cat ran past them, darting into the trees. In utter shock. Several of this story points in the story ring rather true. A lot of Appalachian mountain folk tend to live rather rough in the woods, and it's not uncommon for children as young as 9-ish to more or less survive on their own. I have heard on a couple of occasions. So, being that as it may, there is not much here to go off of, obviously. It's not like this cottage has an address. And of course, I could not go hiking into the Appalachian Mountains, or the Arkansas Mountains, pardon me, to go look for this place. We'll note, however, that even though this is an old account, there are a couple of police reports around about this time in Eureka Springs of children going missing, and reports of two bring them into the woods. Be that as it may, aside from the police reports, this is more or less unsubstantiated. However, I think I'm put it into the dubious pile instead. Not as unsubstantiated as the rest of the things in unsubstantiated pile. The rest of the box here, there are a couple of other story accounts in here. However, I think I'm going to grab a small eat and finish up the research on these next two stories. I will come back when I'm ready. The research for these last two took a little longer. Last three, pardon me. Rifling through the box of this old Paranormal Institute came up with a ton of stuff, actually. Turns out these folks were a little better at following up on their information. And so, we are going to attempt, shall we? Alright, let's begin again. Master Collection, Ontario Paranormal Institute. Tape number 1. Account number 10. Investigator 32. Transcribing. Alright, these next accounts are all printed, which is nice to see. Again. And they have following up corroborating evidence, but I'll talk about that after I'm done. Number 10 begins. Okay. So I don't really know how to start this story off, but it had just happened like an hour ago, and I'm still spooked. So, a bit of a preface. Me and my friend are home alone right now, have been for a few hours. Every time he comes over, we go to the woods by my house, and it's normally uneventful, with some throwing rocks and breaking trees and stuff, harmless fun. This time, something else happened. Like I said, we are home alone, and have been for a while, and while this happened, we're obviously home alone. Went outside to go to the woods. The trip there was uneventful, but once we got there, something was off. Everything was dark. Tons of trees had been knocked down. The entire place was not like I remembered it being. We kept going in, still having our harmless fun. And at one point, my friend turned to me and said we should go back. I looked at my phone and decided it had only been 30 minutes, so we might as well stay longer because it'd be a few hours before anyone would want to go home. We continued on, finding a few strange things, like an old rusted, crushed Mountain Dew can, probably 10 or 20 years old, and a toy bat, which had been completely destroyed by the wind and water and other things. That was probably even older than the can. Our plan was to go further than I had ever been into the woods, which isn't very hard for us because I've barely been in there that deep. After walking for a while, we came to a landmark I knew of that marked about the deepest I've ever been. A while ago, when I was going far in, I came upon a bridge on a log that fell over in a river in the woods. However, one thing was different. Something sitting on top of it. Whatever was on it was small and resembled the head of an animal. We got closer and got a good view of it. It was a deer skull, pearly white and clean, sitting on the bridge, with no clue as to who put it there, and where the rest of it was. Behind the river there was a huge hill with a creepy small house on it, and while we were looking around, I heard a creak or some other high-pitched noise towards it. Freaked out, we began to run. Behind me, I hear my friend scream, and I hear him running behind me. We both keep running, and once we reach the edge of the woods, we step onto the road. I asked him why he screamed. He said he heard footsteps next to him. We quickly made our way home. When we got there, the garage door was open. Not knowing if it was left open or not, we ran inside, locking the door, checking the house, and turning the alarm on. Now we're sitting here, and by the time I finish this it's nearly 2 hours since. And I still can't shake the feeling of the eerie woods from me. I'd like to know any more evidence of that has happened, ask my friend. And then what follows, small grouping of details that I will obviously be keeping confidential. Like I said, children playing in the dark or playing in the woods especially is rife with imagined stories. And it does not help when they wander into wooded areas that teenagers and other... I was going to say malcontents, but that's not exactly fair. People who like to do things in the woods, like put creepy skulls on top of old broken bridges, for instance, or occupy derelict houses. There doesn't seem to be much substantiation. When I contacted the person who wrote this, they wrote this 3 years ago. They maintain that it's true, and given that it was written within 2 hours or so of the original event occurring, I'd like to think that it has more truth to it than other things. However, because again, none of these things unsubstantiated. I'm going to have to put this one in the unsubstantiated pile. Moving on to the next one. Yes, I remember this one. Research was difficult for this one as well. Alright. Master Collection, Ontario Paranormal Institute, tape number 1. Count number 11. Investigator 32, transcribing. Count is written on printed, typed white paper. There are details that will be remaining confidential on the back, which I used in the research corroborating the story. Account. Account number 11 begins. About 6 years ago, when my cousin, we'll call him James, 15, and I was 7, our parents left us to go to a wedding. They trusted him enough to babysit me for a while so they could get to the wedding time. It was more of the parents' friends, so we didn't really have to come, and it's cheaper to leave us at home. It was sometime in fall, maybe the first week or so of November. He and I were playing games when there was a scratching at the door. Loud and animal-like. Something or someone wanted to get in. James had gotten up and walked over to the door to look who it was, only to have the door kicked in. Or rather, the door kicked, not kicked in, pardon me. It was like something wanted to break the door down. James started to get nervous and he looked at me. He was scared, and today I still don't know why. He was completely silent and he quickly ushered me upstairs. It was only around 7, but it was dark, and he insisted that it was by bedtime. He tucked me into bed and went downstairs. This was my aunt and uncle's house, and they hunted. They had a small amount of guns, and I could tell that when James went downstairs again, he went to grab one of the guns. I heard loud shuffling outside in the leaves, and I called for him to come upstairs. He was up and next to my bed in less than a second with a gun in hand. I told him about what I was hearing outside and how I was scared. He looked outside and said there wasn't anything, and then the scratching and kicking at the door had stopped. But I was still scared by someone trying to get in and hurt us. James stayed in my room and insisted we would be okay. I fell asleep, and from what I know, so did he. Around midnight, the shuffling began, again, and it was in the house. I immediately started to cry, and that woke James up really fast. He got up and walked out of the room and stood at the top of the stairs. Seconds later, I heard him shoot something and a scream. He ran right back to the room and blocked the door with everything he could find. I was still bawling my eyes out and barely registering what was going on. James sat on the bed next to me and tried to comfort me, but I was having none of it. I kept wailing at the top of my lungs. A minute or so later, there was scratching at the bedroom door. James grabbed his phone and called the police, with me now trying to push him so he was in front of me. I wanted to be as far away from whatever that was. The scratching continued, and it seemed like an hour until the police arrived. Sirens were enough to scare whatever that thing was. I don't remember much from what happened, and James only ever tells me when I'm not around. All I've got, really. Account ends there. Like I said, there were some details which will remain confidential here, but they were enough to corroborate that there was something that happened, and there was a location that was definitely there. I was even able to contact this James. Once again, children in terrifying situations. The police report seems to believe that it was a bear, and from what I could tell from James's account, it was 2. With one interesting little side note. James, once again a pseudonym for his protection, while he was adamant that it was very likely a bear, his description of the creature, which walked on 2 legs even when inside, and had no fur at all on its head, is extremely disturbing. Could have been some disease that the animal had. Rabies is known to make hair fall out, I believe. However, the gunshot that James and the author of this both remember firing seems to do nothing to the animal. James replied with a picture of the weapon, and it is indeed a hunting rifle, very common area. Certainly not something that a bear wouldn't normally be able to shrug off. This was either a sick and enraged animal or something else entirely. This goes on to the corroborated file. Be investigated further. Our first one of the night, folks. One moment to reset the tape. While I go for our final of the day. Alright. Apologies. This is a short account, but one with a history. Master Collection, Ontario Paranormal Institute, tape number 1, account number 12. Investigator 32 transcribing. Once again, typed and printed, white paper with details written on the back. Whoever the investigator was for this whole Paranormal Institute, they did themselves a pretty good job. And if I ever find them, I'm shaking their hands. Stop me from having to go into that squirrel-infested nightmare one more time. The count begins. This was a small event that took place last summer in my home of Staten Island. I lived in a community with a bunch of parks and a pool in the center of it all. I was going to meet a friend to smoke and take my girlfriend at the time out for lunch, so I decided to post myself one of those on one of the park's many concrete garbage pail covers. I took my surroundings in and... Sorry folks, this is also transcribed oddly. I took my surroundings in. A man old enough to be his grandpa. I felt something was wrong. I came from a family of cops, and my blood is kicking in. My eyes were fixed on the man. Brown eyes, fair skin, salt and pepper hair, and a red and blue tablecloth button-up shirt. My gut said, watch him, so I did. The entrance to the playground was adjacent to me on the side, and the man and the child were making a right turn entrance and lit my smoke. I noticed the distance between them. The kid didn't even acknowledge this man. This is where it hits me. The kid runs in the playground. The man keeps walking past the entrance. I broke sight to watch the kid run in, and I returned to the man. He was looking at me, my gut feeling a sense of a predator as we locked. He smiled the biggest shit-eating grin like a malicious child with his hand jar. He began to make for an exit out of the park, which is an adjacent to me on the right side. I ran to the kid and politely asked him, "Hey bud, you know that man in the red and blue shirt?" The young man shook his head no. I realized that I may have to prevent this child's abduction. I spreaded news about this man in the neighborhood like bad gossip. As I moved away, I still remember that wide smile. On the surface, this account seems nothing more than someone catching a potential abductor in the act. And certainly, that could be what it could be. This one took some digging, but given the clues in the story and the reference material on the back, two striking things. One, there is an entity in paranormal circles known as the Smiling Man. It typically appears as a smiling shadow figure over people's beds. Of course, this is different, being that it's in broad daylight and there were details to this man. However, that does not help. Second piece of evidence. With no small amount of luck, as it turns out, Staten Island Parks had a small CCTV program running around that time. It was shut down shortly afterwards, but I was able to get my hands on some tapes. And after some combing through, I found what appears to be corroboration of this particular story. It shows a teenager sitting and smoking in a garbage pail outside of a park, and a young boy walking towards the park and turning in and running into the park. Every event lines up with the exception of the lack of an older man walking. Boy, there's nothing there except for a small blur tape when the teenager turns and according to the account, locks eyes with the stranger. For a brief moment, when you pause that frame, the blur appears to have a smile. I'm filing this and corroborated with the CCTV evidence. Hope that someone is able to follow up. End recording.